is Trevor, and I'm here to bridge the gap between the working world and the spiritual world. In this video, I'm going to share with you my personal and spiritual development journey, and I'm going to ask something of you that you listen to this about you and not about me. One of the biggest shifts that helped me in my personal and spiritual development journey was when I stopped listening to people like they were talking about themselves, and I listened only from a place of, what am I hearing? Because understand that when someone's talking, you are putting your listening onto that talking. It's not what we see and what we hear that matters, it's how we're looking and how we're listening. And if you look for this, you see that it's everywhere. I mean, let's do a simple thought experiment to see every single person who watches this video is going to have their own interpretation of it. Everyone's going to hear me differently. Everyone's going to see me differently. What does that tell you? That tells you you are the one doing it. You are creating me right now. You're either creating me as, what is he talking about? This, that, whatever. I don't know what it is. You know better than I. And I know this is so true because I've seen myself. I have listened and watched the same people say the same things, like actually a recorded video, and the difference in the first time I watched it versus watching it after having, say, gone through more growth on my end, it's a completely different person and message that I'm seeing and hearing. So understand, it's not what we see and hear that matters, it's how we're looking and how we're listening. And with that, we're gonna dive in. It all started on my 27th birthday? Was I 26 or 27? I was 27. On my 27th birthday, I had what at the time I called a quarter-life crisis. And I called it that for years, like 5 years. I was like, oh, I'm having a quarter-life crisis. My quarter-life crisis last year. Quarter-life crisis. Did you know about my quarter-life crisis? Hey everybody, I'm having a quarter-life crisis. I was like, quarter-life crisis guy. That's who I was being. I talked yesterday, and I've talked in a lot of videos about this idea and this distinction of being, that who we are being is everything. I was being that I had a quarter-life crisis. That's how my personal and spiritual development journey began. A lot of people talk about something that had them start awakening. For a lot of people, it's usually some type of suffering, some type of negative event that brings that out of them. This is ancient wisdom. I could quote a million people who say that suffering is our greatest teacher. So for a lot of people, that's what kind of gets them started on their journey. For me, I don't know what it was. When I turned 27, I don't really know how to explain it. Actually, I have a theory that's kind of woo-woo, and I'll get there at the end. So I'll tell you, I'll save that for the end. What do I think happened? What do I think started to wake me up that I used to say was me having a quarter-life crisis? So I have the quarter-life crisis, and then I just started diving into all things personal development. You know, some books I read early on that were really impactful for me were like The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss, Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod, The Happiness Advantage by Shawn Achor. I went to this conference that Ramit Sethi hosted, so I was doing a lot of things. I was starting to read books, starting to do things like that to get into it. And I just want to say in general, one huge thing that I've learned is I think it is important and necessary to read books and do things like that. And there's some people who say, I can hear one of my former coworkers at the first company I ever worked for, who just in general was talking about this whole idea of personal development, or someone like Tony Robbins. And he was like, if that stuff works, then how come people got to like keep reading books? Or how come they go to the Tony Robbins seminar like again and again? If it works, then like, why doesn't it work? And I was like, ooh, yeah, wow, what am I doing? Am I like, it's like making me question myself. And then I thought, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Have you ever heard of a garden? Like, you are a living being. You are changing every single second. I'm not the same person I was when I started this video. Every cell in your body, everything is changing. Your mind is changing all the time. And just like tending to a garden, I think this garden analogy to personal development is incredible. It runs super deep. But yet, whoa, I got to keep pulling these weeds. I just pulled these weeds last year. I got to plant new flowers again. I just planted these flowers. Yeah, that's how it works. That's called life. So be patient and kind with yourself. This journey never ends. You are where you are. It takes as long as it takes, and you'll never be done. Now that that's out of the way, spark notes on my journey. Listen about you, not about me. Started out reading some books, things like that. I was coming at it really from a big place of like ego, like wanting to engage in personal development. I wasn't even into spiritual development at that point. That came later after I stumbled into meditation. But at the time, it was all about personal development. It was all about me, like, doing stuff so I could be smarter, so I could be better than other people, so I could make more money, and then I would be happy, right? And then for a while, it manifested as me really diving into fitness and nutrition in potentially, one could say, an unhealthy, obsessive type way. I was like working out 7 days a week. I tracked everything I ate in my fitness pal, and there was this unconscious thing that I had going on of like, well, if I get to where my body is perfect, whatever that means, then I'll be able to love myself. Ooh, okay, so now we're getting to the good stuff. So what's happening for you and for us when we have this idea of wanting to work on ourselves and develop ourselves? What it really all comes down to, and the biggest thing that I think I've learned on my journey and that I really want to share, what I think it's all about, it's going to be cheesy, but it's all about love. It is about loving yourself. We do all these things. We think we want to like make more money, do this, work out, all this stuff. It's all subconsciously about just wanting to be able to love ourselves, to be loved unconditionally. I'm not going to get into all this stuff about like how that ties into your parents and things like that. I've talked in another video about perfectionism and what that meant for me. Since I'm on the topic, I'll just touch on it briefly. Is that this whole idea of perfectionism as well, right? Like, what is perfectionism? It's you thinking that you need to be perfect in order for you to be loved. That's the underlying implication. And I say that now like it's such an easy or obvious thing to say. That was a major blind spot I had up until a couple months ago. So just another example as well of how, and I don't anticipate that's the last thing, like, well, now I know that. Now I know everything about self-love. I would say I know like this much about self-love, and there's a universe to know of it. All these things are infinite concepts. Be patient and kind with yourself. Know that you are who you are. It takes as long as it takes. You'll never be done. Back to the spark notes on the journey. So that's where I was coming from, and those are the things I was doing early on in my journey. What started to shift everything for me was when I stumbled into meditation. Now, meditation, please hear me. It is not some like woo-woo esoteric thing that it's unnatural or some like extra like weird thing to do. You know what's a weird thing to do and what's unnatural? Living in the cities that we live in, living in New York, or I'm in Miami right now, but all right, this is going to be at least 2, maybe 3 parts. A lot more footage here, but I want to keep these under 10 minutes. If you like this, like it, subscribe, follow along. I'll be back tomorrow with the next part of this, continue my discussion on meditation.